Percent of the time, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It
Gets the people going.
You are now listening to Diagnonsense.
Then we would just be idiots saying nonsense.
With Kurt Honak.
Damn it.
And Isaac Smolden.
I am also here. Yeah, so anyway, I'm sitting there sick last night, already not feeling great, and then you have me watch Apocalypse Now, so that really set the mood for my sickness. Mm-hmm. What a great I'm feeling like garbage movie to watch. Definitely made me feel a lot better watching Apocalypse Now.
You did it?
On a night when I have to get up and go to work.
Yeah.
I think I texted you right after. I was like, why are you having me watch this on a school night?
Well, and
this is not a school night type of movie.
I think I had like the final cut edition or something, so that's like a 3-hour long.
Oh yeah.
Did you
oh
watch
yeah, I
that
watched
version?
it. Yeah, I watched the 3-hour version. Yep. Not even able to get enough sleep to fight off the set. That's why I'm still sick this morning.
It's all my fault.
So it is all your fault. Yeah, that was a trip.
Yeah.
Welcome to the rice fields, Kurt.
That's a pretty profound movie for a lot of people.
Yeah, welcome to the rice fields, everyone. Welcome to Diagnonsense. Isaac Smolden, Kurt Honak, talking about Apocalypse Now, which when did this movie come out?
I think
Kurt?
that was a 1970s movie, wasn't it?
Okay, so that's what I thought too.
Because of the filming of it, like late 70s. Am I wrong?
Yeah, 79.
Okay, yep.
What shocked me is how close to the end of the Vietnam War this movie came out.
Yeah, it was like too soon.
It was might be too soon now.
It's still
honestly.
too soon. Yeah, it's still too soon.
No, I was like blown away.
Yeah.
And some very modern interpretations of kind of what the Americans did wrong. I'm not even talking about like on the ground morally, just as far as how they conducted the war, like some of the mistakes, some of the traps they fell into in how they, from like a 30,000 foot level, conducted themselves in the Vietnam War, like how they got bogged down into kind of a situation that they couldn't win. And so that was like the first thing I looked up. I was like, man, this came out in 79. Like,
right.
That's
pretty fresh.
And it's showing just soldiers just mowing down innocent civilians and stuff in 79. This was pretty controversial for the time when it came out, right? I mean,
I believe so.
But it's definitely capital C cinema. Feels like we don't have a lot of movies made like this anymore. I mean, it's right up there with The Water Boy by Adam Sandler.
The Water Boy.
Capital C
The
cinema.
Water Boy.
Yeah, let's just get into it. So
okay.
I've never seen it before, right?
Yeah.
But you have. Was this something a movie that you watched a lot when you were?
Well, I think so. My dad had it, but it didn't become like profound to me until I started noticing pop culture references to it.
Yeah.
Like
love the smell of napalm in the morning.
No, one of my favorite rock bands, Ministry, they sampled Apocalypse Now. And then rock or metal, I don't know. They're kind of metal to me, but and then StarCraft has references to the movie.
Yeah, they have a Rise of the Valkyries reference in there, don't they? Or
I
something?
think they have something like that, and then the units have like references. Like the last one I remember is StarCraft 2, the little stalker unit. He says, "I'm the heart of darkness," which is a reference to the book, that the movie's based on. You know?
No,
so in American pop culture, it is referenced a lot.
You know a lot more about the outside the movie stuff, so maybe we stay there for a second. Is it based off of anything related to a true story outside of, obviously? I felt like from what I've seen in history books and from what I've watched in documentaries and listened to from firsthand sources, the setting and the environment is very, very accurate to Vietnam. But is the story itself about Captain Willard, is that based off of anything in particular?
I don't think so. I think that was based off of the original. Like so what, I forget, if Francis Capella, is that his
name? Something.
He's the director, right?
Yeah, probably should figure that out.
Yeah, probably should figure that out.
He directed a really good movie.
Francis Ford
Oh, and speaking of Ford, not to completely derail us. Yeah. Francis Ford Coppola.
Okay.
Is the director.
I think I got that
Harrison Ford is in this movie as just some random guy that
just
shows up.
some
I was like, whoa, that's Han Solo. And it came out in 1979 too. So this is after the original Star Wars. I'm like, whoa, Han Solo's there. Oh, and he's gone. We're never going to see him again.
He's just a rando.
Just completely random Harrison Ford. I don't know. I was like, why is Indiana Jones telling this guy to go up into Cambodia? That's crazy. Anyway, yeah. Oh, he also directed The Godfather.
He did, and Dracula.
Okay.
That's another favorite of mine is Dracula as well.
This is making a little more
so
sense.
So he's a pretty profound director. I think as far as like outside of so the book, I forget the author, I think is Joseph Conrad. Okay, you're right. So the book is not, or the film is not based on any
it
like
seemed a little out there to
story.
be like real life events, right?
However, they took Francis Ford Coppola. God, I keep mispronouncing his name. He took the Heart of Darkness movie and took the movie and just moved it forward in the timeline, right?
Yeah.
To like a modern, what would this look like in today?
Okay.
So the book it's kind of about how as you get deeper into territory that is less governed, that your sort of like moral compass changes because your environment changes. And so you change with your environment. And so the book was kind of about our normal compass of morality as the barriers of society are kind of pulled out from us, like that we behave differently and react differently. And so that was kind of the premise of the book.
And the book is about a Belgian captain that goes into like the Congo. And so he just made it for a modern audience in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a similar, I mean, if you know anything about Belgium and the Congo, it's kind of a similar type
concept.
of situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Should we get into the actual plot of the movie? Because I was I went into it knowing nothing outside of I've seen, the minute clip of the helicopters coming in with Ride of the Valkyries playing.
Yeah,
and
right.
obviously
everybody's familiar.
Everyone
with
knows that. Everyone knows I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah.
So outside of what I'd pick up in modern pop culture, I didn't have really a frame of reference. So it starts out very surreal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this movie's 3 hours long. What did Kurt get me into? Like, I had to install the Blu-ray player on my Xbox and everything. It's just going to be these like crossfade shots with a fan turning into helicopter blades for the entire 3 hours. But it starts very surreal, and then it's kind of like standard, it's like standard Vietnam movie.
Yeah.
I get my assignment and I'm a special forces dude and got to wake up the drunk captain.
Yeah.
And he goes onto the boat, right? And then it stays that way for the first hour, right? Like you have the helicopter scene, very cool, and they're fighting and explosions, and the crazy colonel's like, I want to go surfing in Vietnam, and the napalm, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, and there's a tiger, I almost got eaten by a tiger, crazy, that's crazy. And then like halfway through, it's just, we just murdered a whole boat of civilians.
Yeah,
we got to this bridge, the bridge blowing up, and everyone's just like freaking out, and
there's no government
officer
beyond this.
We're just firing bullets into the void. There's all these dead Americans, and there's these kids wearing like American pilot helmets and corpses everywhere, and oh man, there's all these crazy. Here's a bunch of beheaded people and arms and stuff, and it really went from being fun war movie to hell on earth in very short order.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how the original book plays out. It gets progressively darker as they kind of like get further away from society or civilization. Yeah. And so it's kind of this like introspective trip, at the same time being like a trip in the environment that is mirrors that internally. So
because for those that haven't watched it, Captain Willard is getting sent outside of Vietnam into Cambodia, which technically military is not supposed to operate in Cambodia, and he's getting sent in to chase after this colonel that basically went crazy, disappeared into the jungle, and is fighting like this guerrilla campaign that's extremely brutal, and the generals want him taken out because he's not he's gone beyond the pale.
He's
right?
he's gone.
gone
Colonel
beyond the
Kurtz
pale.
has gone insane.
Colonel Kurtz has gone insane. I was like, man, this is yeah. I caught that. I wasn't gonna say anything about Kurt Honak and Colonel Kurtz, but yeah, Colonel Kurtz is he's way out there. I haven't seen you beheading anyone, and I don't know. Sacrificing baby arms or whatever he was talking about. It's very graphic, but it's in service of the extreme violence is supposed to his whole thing. Colonel Kurtz's whole thing as Captain Willard gets out into the jungles and he finally meets up with their encampment weird cult thing. Right, is Colonel Kurtz is saying the reason why we're not winning this war is because you send over these guys for a year and it's horrible and it's hell on earth and they just want a hot shower. They want to go back home. They want their families, like they have nothing invested here. And we're fighting this enemy that they're willing to do horrible things because for them it's victory or death, no in between. And they have families and they have all the same stuff, but they're fighting for something greater and they don't have a moral line. Like they're willing to do whatever it takes to win. If we just had a fraction of the number of the people we have here that are willing to do whatever it takes to win, like we could win this war, no problem. Right.
Which makes him a symbolic threat to his command.
Correct.
Which is why Willard has to go kill him.
Right. He, and I mean, the movie doesn't portray him as being a good person, like in the right for this, but it doesn't really shy away from leaning into this guy's actually a secret genius because he's willing to commit any war crime necessary to win. It got a little messy towards the end for me, right? Because they're getting out there, and obviously we're not going chronologically, but I just have bits and pieces that I want to focus on. And so they're getting out there, and Captain Willard, the protagonist, he is like, okay, well, if I can't take this guy out myself, we're just gonna. There's maybe like 1,000 people living in this weird like cult in the ruins of some ancient society, right? There's some symbolism there. And he's like, well, if I can't just kill him, then we're just going to call in a airstrike and just glass the entire thing from 30,000 feet. And that'll solve the problem, right? And he's got his radio. And instead he goes in there, he's captured and then let go because Colonel Kurtz both wants to defeat the Vietnamese, or that was kind of where he started with. Like he wanted to beat the Viet Cong and win the war with these people, but then he also is like, I just want it to be over, and I kind of want this guy to take me out, but then to take my story back and tell my story. And Willard's like, well, this guy is really evil, but also he's probably right about this is the only way to win the war. And I need to take him out. Should I just like take all these rabid supporters with him? Are they too far gone? Like they've all been brainwashed and they're crazy. And then spoiler alert, he kills Kurtz and then takes his little manifesto. And Colonel Kurtz's manifesto says, exterminate them all and all of his followers, right? And then it's like, oh, is Willard going to call in the airstrike? And he just kind of grabs the last dude that was with him on the boat, and they get on the boat and drive off, and the end.
It kind of becomes a horror movie at that point, right? Because you're like, well, we don't really know. And, they left a clip in, I guess, with the original theatrical cut.
Because there's 5 cuts of this movie,
too. They left a clip in where there's a bunch of flames at the end, and so the audience interprets
they did bomb it.
Yeah, it's almost ambiguous because the clips, I think, were recycled, I think.
Yeah.
That it's almost ambiguous. It's like, well, did he call it in or did he not call it in?
In the final cut, in the cut that the 3-hour one that I watched, and we should reiterate that we're watching the final cut because there's 5 cuts of this movie.
Yeah.
But in the version that I watched, he just drives the boat away and then fade to black. Like, obviously Willard's dead, but you don't know not Willard, sorry. Colonel Kurtz is dead.
Right.
But you don't know. So is Willard like just going to go back to the army and try to carry on? Because we've already established he's got some PTSD things going on right from the get-go.
Right.
Did he call in the airstrike or all the people, you see all the people kind of lay down their guns when Willard's dead, like almost like they're expecting it. And then, sorry,
Kurtz
is dead. And Willard comes out and they all like lay down their guns.
It's become like tribal, this tribal.
Yeah, like so it's like
theological thing. Yeah.
Are they just gonna disperse or are they all gonna die? I guess the point that the movie was making to me is almost like you're stupid for wondering what any of this like what happens to all these people. That's not the point. Like, who cares what happens to these people? Who cares who lives, who dies? It doesn't matter. That's not what we're trying to tell you. In fact, maybe one of the themes is that like nothing matters. It's all chaos. Who cares? I mean, yeah, well, to an extent.
There's a lot of interpretations of the film, but I do want to step away probably a little bit from the fact. So the movie, so the book was updated to be contextually within the Vietnam War, but right. I think the story is universal though. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to harp on probably. I mean, I haven't served in the military and I don't want to make any assumptions or I don't have any preconceived notions about what that would be like. However, I do think the story is trying to convey that this is not a battle between the two opposing forces. This is a symbolic battle between Kurt's, the way he's fighting the war. Yeah. And
the way that is going, the only way to win
that he believes is effective. And Willard ends up believing that this is, throughout the story, he kind of starts to.
Willard sees that, Kurtz is right. The only way we're going to win is if we have no moral compass, like commit all the war crimes we want, because that's the only way we're going to be successful. And it's almost this choice between victory or doing it the right way, how command wants you to do it. And
which is a symbolic battle. It's not a literal battle. It becomes literal because I think the symbolic gets conflated with the literal in warfare. But, just watching this interpretation of the movie, right? But I think that it's interesting because I think that what Kurtz is up against is not against the war and the ideologies inside of the war, but he is up against what the war is supposed to symbolically represent, mm-hmm. and the ideologies, maybe not in the sense of the literal fight, but in the sense of the symbolism of the ideologies. And so his fight is like very literal, whereas the fight that they're trying to wage is more symbolic. And so there's this like schism between, and I think the duality is represented.
And I think he almost chooses neither is my interpretation, right?
Like
he doesn't embrace like the, we need to win this at all costs. We should just be doing whatever it takes to win, not whatever is morally right. He ends up killing Kurtz, right? But then he also, my interpretation, he's talking about, I'm not even a part of their army anymore. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what command told me to do, but it's because, all of this needs to stop. I'm not even part of their army anymore. And so when he's going back, obviously it ends before he gets back, but my interpretation is like he's done. Yeah. Like he's done with the whole thing. The only way for him to win is not to play.
It's almost like, he's on a journey of self-realization, whereas Kurtz has kind of like decided what he's about already or what he thinks is righteous.
Yeah.
I like the movie because it makes me think about Thomas Szasz and Ernest Becker a lot and their sociology type philosophy types. To me, Kurtz is like up against this symbolism and representing, trying to battle the symbol, like his command is he's a symbolic threat to them because he's not doing it the way they want him to do it, which could literally kill him. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of Ernest Becker and one of his books, The Denial of Death. And there's a quote in there, and I can't remember if it's attributed to him or to one of the people commenting on his book, but so I don't want to misquote him. But there's a quote in there that says, "Since the main task of human life is to become heroic and transcend death, every culture must provide its members with an intricate symbolic system that is covertly religious. This means that ideological conflicts between cultures are essentially battles between immortality projects or holy wars. I feel like the winner becomes de facto righteous." And so that's why the symbolism is so significant, right? Because if Kurtz is right and they're not fighting the war extreme enough, then his command is going to be put into question for their they're going to be potentially held accountable
right
for their mishaps.
It's only a war crime if you lose.
Right. Right.
Which is true in a court of law, but
potentially, right? And so I really like this concept that sort of like Kurtz is he realizes the futility that he isn't greater than this kind of like social Darwinism.
Yeah.
Until I think he believes before he gets to that point in the story. So maybe it's a journey of self-realization for both Willard and Kurtz, but by he gets to the end of that situation, Kurtz, before he dies, and he has this kind of epiphany that he isn't greater than the symbolic and social constructs that he fights for.
Yeah, and I'm a little disappointed. You're not rooting for, at least I wasn't rooting for Kurtz.
Well,
nobody's, he's crazy, but
yeah, nobody.
But I'm a little disappointed that
right
in his character that you, and maybe this is the problem with me, almost like a sunk cost fallacy, right? Is like you've done all this atrocious, horrible stuff all around the basis of we need to go further to the dark side compared to our enemy in order to win this. But he's also fine with like, well, I did all this terrible stuff all on the basis of winning this. But honestly, if you just want to kill me and kill all my followers and ruin
to me,
this,
that was
that's fine. Whatever.
That
dude.
was
I didn't work at this for years. I didn't go to paratrooper school at 38.
To me, that was an admittance to the futility of what he like.
It's not even
might
worth
have
it.
been a realization that was the admittance.
I can
to like
see
a
that.
futility of what he was attempting to accomplish.
Yeah, maybe almost like he's saying, well, this could potentially win the war, or this could be what we need to do, but at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Like whether we do it my way or Command's way, or whether we win or the Viet Cong win, does at the end of the day, like what's even the point of all of it? Just class it all. Like, yeah. Then the horror, and then I went to bed at 11 o'clock. Then I went to bed. There's another scene I really wanted to focus on, jumping back to when he meets the French, right? And they've got there's lots of characters. We really focused on Willard and Kurtz, but all the characters on his boat all have some different thing. You have like the surfer that kind of gets indoctrinated.
Right.
You have the chief that his character is, I'm too old. I'm just trying to get back and do things the right way, and I'm just here to protect my boat and my guys. And then you have the young kid, and he ends up, spoiler alert, dying while a recording of his mom telling him how much she loves him.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, that one was maybe the most on the nose symbolic character moment. And then you have the French, and their thing is they've got this plantation, and the French lost just in history. The French lost to the Vietnamese or more specifically the Viet Cong. I believe they already were at the time at Dien Bien Phu, and it was very embarrassing for them. And there's these French guys that they just kind of go back to their plantation up near or in Cambodia, in the north, and they're like, we can't go. The citizens in Paris betrayed us.
Yeah.
We lost. We have nothing more here other than this land that's been in my family for 70 years. And we can't go back to France. We can't go forward. We can't get along with the Viet Cong. So we're just going to sit here. We're going to last for as long as we can because this is ours. That's the only thing. Like, it doesn't, and I think their point of their characters is like, it doesn't need to make sense. Like, we know that we can't stay here forever. We're all going to die here eventually, but it's too late for it. Almost going back to that theme of futility, maybe.
Yeah.
We're just going to do it because that's what we got to do. It doesn't need to make sense. Shut up. Stop asking questions about it. Like, this is
that scene wasn't in the original film either, or
Really?
the theatrical cut. Yeah.
Okay.
So they cut that out completely. And so when they're going down the river, it's almost like it's a little, the atmosphere is a little more ominous and intense because things just get progressively worse. Like there's no break in the middle of the film.
That was like a nice little break.
Yeah, it was like a break from all the horror and chaos.
I did imagine, so there's the widow, right? And her and Willard end up going to bed together, and she's having him smoke morphine and talking about, there is two parts to you. There is the lover and there is the warrior, and smoke this morphine. And I just, in my head, I saw teenage Kurt laying in bed like, that's just so me, man. That's just so me. I'm the lover and the warrior. And I was like, this is why Kurt had me watch this movie.
No. I appreciate the duality though, because there's a lot of duality. Like if you notice it, like so the I'm grabbing it here, but the cover, there's duality where there's like Willard and then there's Kurtz.
What?
And the Kurtz is
I didn't even see that.
The reflection of the of Willard.
Yeah.
In the on
don't
the
know how I missed
cover of that, but yeah, I don't think it's in the film where I don't think his reflection is it would have been interesting if they would have put that in, but I also think
That's
that
cool.
they were not trying to add too much to the film because this is like, I don't know how many cuts they've had of it.
A lot of cuts. Even in this DVD case that you have, there's two different ones. Is there two? There's the Redux and there's the final cut. And there's the 1979 original. So we've got 3 cuts just in the DVDs.
Yeah. The animal sacrifice and then Kurt's dying is another duality point.
The whole movie
where
is
it's almost
symbolism.
like it's almost another piece on symbolism and the duality of Willard, realizing Kurtz's perspective, and there's a lot of
as the sacrifice there's
a lot of symbolism. I guess why I really love Apocalypse Now as a film though is because of Zaz and writers like Ernest Becker who, to me, I think that story is not just applicable to war. I think the symbolism in that story is applicable to all human battles against, in social theory, there's biological determinism or social Darwinism, which is recognized as like, a lot of people put this into this like box of like, neo-fascist sort of beliefs. And I guess me talking about it is not an embracement of that social theory, but is more a reflection on, if the world is, if violence is in the hearts of men, how do we better ourselves so that we are not violent people? And that's why I really like that film, because I feel like that film was sort of a story about that. Even though we may not even use physical violence, of course there's physical violence in the film, but we're in a battle between psychological symbols, right? And what Thomas Zaz called symbolic cannibalism is prevalent, where people are in this kind of social Darwinian system, and the sort of like the brutality that gets played out on people is sort of like we socially accept that as kind of like normal instead of being, I don't know, graceful. What do I want to say? We're not compassion is missing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I really like that film, because Zaz wrote about mental health and the people that underwent mental health therapies to symbolically be corrected. Because if we look back at things like bloodletting and, insulin coma therapies, hydrotherapy, none of those things have a medical precedent. And so that film is about war, but the message that I took away was that, we should be careful about making the symbolic literal to the point where we have to have a literal response, because the world has tried to correct people by, usually through physical violence, has tried to correct people when they are threats to a symbolic status quo, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so
I think for me, the takeaway was that theme. There's so much symbolism in this movie. I think there's a lot of different stuff you can take out of this. I think at some point I am 100%, and the reason why it took so long to record this is because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. So I'm going to have to ask you for your DVDs again. But at some point I'll revisit this, and maybe I'll have a different take or something different that I pull from it. I think what I pulled from it on this first viewing was you have the Army's way, the general's way, the higher ups way, and you have Willard's way. Sorry, and you have Colonel Kurtz's way, and they can't be reconciled with each other. They're ideologically completely removed, and both the generals back in Saigon and Kurtz are telling Willard to do different things, and he at the end has to choose what he has to do what he thinks is best. He has to make up his own mind, go against the grain. He's not necessarily doing it for the generals back home when he kills Colonel Kurtz, but he also is acknowledging that this is madness. Like I think his decision is powerful because he kind of made a statement to me that in today's society, right, it's very, very black and white, very true or false, left or right, take that however you want it. And sometimes the correct decision, in quotes, or moral decision is just none of the above, right? And it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And in the end, he just kind of realizes, like, this is all BS, and I'm grabbing my guy and I'm getting the hell out of here. And
it's funny that you keep getting Kurtz mixed up with Willard.
Because I know.
A thought I had towards the end of the film was when Willard walks out and he's killed Kurtz was, is it possible that Willard is Kurtz and this was a psychological journey the whole movie? Like, I had that thought of like a Fight Club realization. Yeah. But in social Darwinian theory, that big dog eats the little dog kind of mentality was almost like
as
that.
Him replacing Kurtz.
Yeah.
He walks out. There's that scene where Willard's, oh my gosh. There's that scene where Kurtz is standing at the door, right? And then he goes back and Willard's kills him, and he comes back out and he's standing in that exact doorway, and the people are all looking at Kurtz. He goes away, and now they're all looking at